and welcome back to the first episode of SuperCoach Edge for season 2024. Of course, for those of you tuning in for the first time, welcome. And to our returning regulars, welcome back. You must be gluttons for punishment. Liam, how goes it?
Yeah, good. I'm slightly unwell currently, so gonna have to push through a little bit. So if you
Not
do
the
hear
vid.
me if you do hear me wheezing or well actually no, I don't have the vid. It's
Yeah.
but someone else does. But I've been
Who lives in the
accused
same
of
house as you?
yeah, that lives in the same house and I've been accused of giving
Yeah.
it to her despite the fact that I keep coming back negative. But anyway, we sit there in my smugness and move
Yeah.
on. But yes, I do have a cold slash, I don't know, something up with my chest. So I may be struggling for air midway through this. So I do apologize in advance.
Gasping for air, and it's not just off
Yeah.
the back of when you see the price of Bond. It's legit.
For those of you who are first time listeners, as David said, welcome. But and for returning ones as well, make sure you jump across to our social channels where
Mm.
you'll keep up to date with all of our content, all the news as well, and tips and tricks and everything. On YouTube, just simply search Supercoach Edge, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to be notified of when our content drops from week to week. And I guess a little sneaky spoiler here, but potentially midweek as well,
Mm. A
multiple times a
full, a
week.
full week,
Mm.
potentially. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. Mm.
On Twitter, you'll find us at @supercoach_edge, Damon at DamoJ88, myself at @LiamEvans_95, and on Facebook and Instagram, just search Supercoach Edge, and that is where you'll find us.
Liam, we are back officially for the first time in 2024, and it is super exciting, of course. So, across the course of the preseason, we're going to be rolling out various analysis episodes, going line by line, breaking it down into Premos, value picks, and rookies. So, of course, which of the Premos present the most value, who presents the most upside, which mid prices could be on the cusp potentially of a breakout year. Last year, we had a bit of fun with that. We highlighted Tom Green and LDU. One of those guys, potentially both of those guys again, relevant in 2024. And then, of course, which of the rookies are we keeping an eye on before we see any exposed form in the preseason? And then, of course, those that are playing in round zero that we get to get a bit of a cheat code look at. But Liam, in today's episode, we're kicking things off with forward primos.
Mhm.
So, yeah, unlike last season, we were blessed in the forwards with genuine midfielders such as Dunkley, Rosie, Cogs. But 2024, by gee, it is slim pickings. Absolutely the slimmest of pickings.
Yeah, that's one fine looking bird line. Why doesn't mine look like that? Ah!
Yeah, we're not flushed
Pretty
with
much.
genuine out and out primos, but never fear him because that's where we come in.
Let's do it.
Ready? On 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So just before we kick off, I just want to, I guess, set some expectations around the forwards this year, as Damon said.
Mhm.
It's not looking like last year. So just, I guess, for context, to be a top 8 forward in 2023, you needed to have an average of 97.9 or above. In 2024, I don't think we can expect that. As for a top 8, probably, what some of the top 8 will be scoring 97.9 or averaging around there, but I don't think all of them will be. We need to assume that an average probably closer to the low to mid 90s is probably more so where that cutoff for the top 8 forwards will be. Because look at the list of top 8 forwards from 2023, and it is Zach Butters, who averaged 113.8 because he's a midfielder. Errol Goulden, 111.3 again because he's a midfielder. Connor Rosie, 107.6. Tim Taranto, 106.7. Josh Dunkley, 115.2. Stephen Canilio, 101.7. And then Harry Sheasel, 99.5. And Luke Jackson at 97.9.
So 6 of those 8 were
So
mids.
6 of those, and the first 6,
Genuine
the top
mids.
6 were actual genuine mids. They weren't forwards, realistically. And then even Harry Sheasel was a backman, and Luke Jackson, I mean, he's the only one that's actually selectable as a forward this year.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And like
So
even Luke Jackson was, for what, a third of the season, if you could probably say
yeah,
that, he was number one ruck. So kind of elevates a bit of that average as well, which of course will speak to him because as you mentioned, he is an option this season.
yeah. So yeah, as we said, of those of those guys, only Jackson is a forward option this year. So I think just, yeah, we need to realign our expectations. Looking through the list, there's probably only a handful of Primos who we would classify as being mid options, but also
Mm.
the ones that we do look at in today's episode, we probably just need to have a reset our expectations and understand that a lower average is going to be okay for a forward this year. I don't think we can expect, yeah, anything. I mean, the top six being above 101.7. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yep, spot on. And that's the thing as well. Like going to this year, I think a lot of people are going to be scared by the prospect of not having any out and out, I guess, obvious options like we did last year. But
Mm,
it presents a bit of an upside here in terms of just having, differentiation between yourself and the rest of the competition. So I think all those guys, like especially, Goulden, Rosie, Taranto, Dunkley, Cogs, even Shees, I mean, he was, as the season wore on, was one of the more highly owned across the course of the season. But all those guys there, they were kind of bread and butter. And it goes back to what we were speaking about the early part of last year, where catching up and climbing the ranks was very,
mm,
very slow. And it was due to the fact that, especially in the forwards, everyone had virtually the same forward line. So provides a bit of an opportunity here. And that's where we come in, Liam, as we said before, to sort of throw up a few options and you'll be able to pick and choose as to who the best player is. And that's where the skill set comes in. And it's no longer just, turn up and away you go. So shall we do it? Shall we kick it off with the first one? So Liam, first up we have, of course, one of our favorites. He was once a set and
mm,
forget primo mid. This season he's a mid forward. And it's due to the fact that he's been bevoed. So it kind of gives away as to who it is. It is Jack MACRAE. He's coming in priced at 558.4K. Mid forward, of course, as I said. 2023 average was a 99.9. And of course, when we talk about all these players, all these options, we will need to mention if they have that extra buy, if
mm.
they're playing that round zero fixtured game, which in McRae's case in the Bulldogs, no, he's not. So he only gets the one buy, thankfully. So bit of a tick of the box there, first and
Yeah.
foremost. But of course, as I said, McRae, he's normally one that we would jump at an opportunity to select as a forward mid, but now we're sort of second guessing ourselves. So across his past 3 seasons alone, his regression is stark when looking at his average, which has been 130, dropped down to 115.7 and 99.9 most recently. So the correlating factor that coincides with this drop is his decline in CBAs with 77%, 64%, and just 36%. And more than that, his overall role as an in and under midfielder has now morphed into a bit part mid with longer stints away from the footy camped either on the wing and even on the half
Mm.
forward flank, which I don't know what your thoughts are, Liam, but seeing McRae, he's kind of you don't want to sort of underwrite him, but he's a one-dimensional in and under player. And to
Yeah.
see him lining up at a half forward flank just absolutely made no sense.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. It's such a strange thing to see from him. Like he, as you said, is one dimensional is harsh in a
Yeah.
sense. Like it feels like a mean thing to
That's
say, but
maybe
it's
that's his
accurate.
one wood. Maybe that's the
Yeah,
appropriate terms.
it's
His
more
one
so
wood is
that's
his bread and
his.
butter.
It's he's not like a Bond who can go play forward, who can play in the midfield,
Mm.
um, or I don't know. I can't think of any other players off the top of my head real quickly, but
Like a
or
utility
even like
type
a
player. Yeah.
yeah, he's not that he realistic or like a cog potentially
Like a
or.
DeGoey potentially. Yeah.
Yeah,
Midfield,
you can
forward.
play midfield or the forward and
Yeah.
then play off
Dusty.
the half forward line, but yeah, not McRae. Even the wing is kind of not his forte.
No, because he hasn't he's not blessed
Mm,
with pace, two-way running type thing.
no.
It's kind of one of the knocks in his game. So for him to be pushed out to the wing, it's kind of like Bevo being a stubborn bastard and being like, no, I don't care like as to how much of a veteran of the game you are. You need to
Mm,
build out on your repertoire and which
mm,
it's kind of the way he is. He's not blessed with speed. He's not going to all of a sudden get speed and two-way running. But anyway, but yeah, very, very strange to see. And I guess most concerningly, once that change in role did take effect from round 9 onwards,
mm,
he was only eclipsed. He only eclipsed his overall CBA average of 36% in 7 out of 14 games for a CBA average of 28% across that stretch. And this saw him post a 7-year career low of just 11 scores, 100 plus, and only 5 scores, 120 plus. So, I mean, as you can see there, it kind of speaks for itself the regression that he's had across the board, and it has come off the back of that bread and butter role that he has been gifted year after year, and it's thrown up a bit of a curveball there. Um, in terms of the stats that remain constant for him is his tackles. So they remain around the mark of 4.4 on average a game. And he's posted a new career low average of 10.9 kicks per game, something that he hasn't done since his debut season in 2013. Of course, as you know, with SuperCoach, you get greater score with kicks as opposed to handballs. So that is part of the regression as well. And it's this lack of opportunity to get his hands on the footy on a regular basis by being forced to play away from his natural role that is seriously impacting him. But Liam, the question is, can he reclaim his old role? I'll throw to you here, Liam, so I'm not just rabbiting on for the next part of MACRAE, because he is quite lengthy, the analysis.
Yeah, so I guess the biggest contributing factor for MACRAE being forced out was Treloar, who was granted 78% CBAs compared to the 37% and 34% he had in his previous 2 seasons of the Dogs. Then we had Caleb Daniel,
The wee man.
being gifted 19% CBAs randomly after getting donuts in 2022, which cramped his style massively. That is MACRAE's, but also probably Daniel's scoring as well. The other player who cramped his style was Libba, whose CBAs rose from 59% to 78% across 2022 into 2023. So, yeah, just basically, I don't know what MACRAE has done to Libba, to Bevo, but
yeah, he's done something.
Doesn't want to give him the CBAs. And I guess, and on top of that, in 2024, to make things negative potentially, is the recent drafting of Riley the Colonel Sanders at pick number 6, who is one of the more established young mids from the draft and probably ready in terms of build, which doesn't really bode well for MACRAE. He will no doubt be given valuable CBAs to help him develop, further compromising, the spread of CBAs that MACRAE could potentially grab. The only thing that may see an increase for him is that Baslenk is out. He was, though, getting less CBAs than MACRAE, if that's even possible. Only 30% CBAs going towards Smith. But I guess those have to go somewhere. But the concern would be whether they do go to the likes of a Sanders. Or I don't know, Bevo's just like, hey, let's give more to Libba.
Yeah,
as 30,
the old man.
As what, he'd be like 31, 32. Makes sense.
Old dog new tricks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it does seem that the days of 70 plus CBAs are probably a thing of the past for MACRAE, unless, I guess, touch wood, this doesn't happen. There's injuries to, Treloar, Libba, or Bond, and that frees up CBAs. Or maybe, hopefully, we can pray that Daniel does go back to his role in halfback and loses the CBA rotations. And I mean, Libba's getting older, so maybe he just regresses naturally.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be helpful, first and foremost, if Bevo wasn't Bevo and he wasn't coaching the Dogs. That would have been an absolute godsend. It was looking like it might have been that way when the Dogs missed out on finals.
Surely.
Ever so narrowly, but they've just swept the decks, got rid of all the assistants bar one, I think, and no, we'll back him in. He's won us a flag, so he must be good, and that's probably the same ethos that the Eagles are running with in backing in Simo. But nonetheless, Liam, let's move to our verdicts, which of course we will be giving for each of these guys that we're running through. So first up for me, so I think that the MACRAE that we speak about, that we know and love, I reckon he's potentially a thing of the past, and at his current price point, I don't think he presents much upside, especially if things go the way that they did in 2023. And I'm worried that he could regress further purely off the back of continuing to be bevoed, like we mentioned. But I think he will be a popular pick on name alone, and one I'm likely to have in my team, just sort of going to that point that we made from the get-go, that we're not flush with options here. And he's probably the best of not a bad bunch, but an ordinary bunch, I think, from what we have at our disposal. So that's also with the fact that I think he's going to be highly owned, and that kind of negates any risk if he does happen to reclaim his old role and his old premium scoring. So that's an added bonus if he does so. But Liam, what do you reckon?
I agree, mostly. He'll be in my side, personally, I think. And I think he'll be in plenty of teams, as you said. It's going to negate the risk. But I'm going to go against you slightly.
Hmm.
and not in a way that I like. What you've said is 100% correct. There's no flaw in the analysis. I just think we need to consider that despite his regression, he still finished as a top seven forward if you look at the averages from last year.
Yeah, true.
So,
Yep.
like, there might be a regression from there, which means he doesn't finish with 99.5. But I do think that with 99.5, for a forward this year, it's going to be welcome for anyone.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and with the unknowns and the lack of forward power, I want to say that we're going to have, um, it's going to be okay. So I
Yeah.
do think he's a decent pick, and I think if we forget that we're talking about McRae, like if you said that we were going to get a 99.9 average forward who had potential to have CBAs,
Mm.
like he does, I think we would be looking at him very differently.
Yeah. No,
I think
exactly
there's
right.
almost a
Yeah.
degree of like McRae's being held to a higher standard because of who he was and what he's done in the past. I mean, so I just had a quick look as well while we were talking, and he had 50% plus CBAs in 8 games
Yep.
this year for scores of 106, 103, 112, 131, 145, 107, 122, and the outlier of 49, which was the West Coast game where they lost. So I think we can rule that game out as just an anomaly. Uh, but that comes out, if we ignore that anomaly, that average comes out to 118 from those 7 games where he did get 50% CBAs. So if he
Yep.
can get decent enough CBAs, which there's potential that he does with Baslenka out, and hopefully a natural sort of regression from Libba and Daniel hopefully heading more to the back line. Um, I think there's potential for him to have good enough scores for him to be a worthy forward. Regardless, though, I think he's a decent pick.
Yep. No, you've made a very, very good point there. I think highlighting the fact that when he does get the CBAs, he's still the McRae of old.
Mm.
So yeah, I guess I'm probably backtracking over what I said off the back of what you just enlightened me with, Liam. In terms of the upside side of things, I think that's probably where the upside lies, is if he reclaims his old role. Um, but
And
yeah,
that's a
we
big
just
if, though.
mm,
There's no guarantees of
yeah,
that. I think I'm looking at it more as at a minimum, like, all right, let's have a look at his scores from last year when he wasn't, his lowest score was the 49, then it was 57, and then they were all 81 was his third lowest score. So he's got a
yeah.
decent enough floor for a forward. Like if you said that your forwards were getting an 81 as their lowest score, I'd probably not be too concerned.
Yeah, and even as well there, I've just had a look. The back part of the season where he was kind of lining up more as a high half forward with sort of sputterings of
Mm.
30% CBAs or 40% thereabouts, just below 50%. He was still averaging over 10 games that he played in that role 90.2. So again, not too bad and probably still worthy of a spot of being a top six, top eight forward at minimum. So yeah, I
Mm.
think we're both on the same page here that he's probably worth a pick at this
Yeah.
stage. And yeah, there's a little bit of upside there. And if he does regress, well, we're with the pack. So limits the amount of damage there. But shall we move on to the next player, Liam? Who do we have?
Yes, Damon. Let's move on to the next guy, and it is Luke Jackson. He is 547K. He is eligible as a ruck and a forward. He had an average in 2023 of 97.9, and he doesn't have the extra buy, which is good. And I think Freo, off memory, have a really good buy as well, because there's only two
Mm,
teams in the week that they have. It's them and one other team. I can't remember who it
I
is
think it's
in that
Port, I
week.
think, from
I think
memory.
you're right,
Yeah.
but that's good. So he has a very positive buy there, and obviously the handy DPP. So we did
Mm,
obviously get to see a bit of a glimpse of what Jackson can produce when given opportunity as the number one ruck. But with Hodor, Sean Darcy, his relevance takes a bit of a hit as he becomes more of a key position forward who pinch hits in the ruck as opposed to a standalone ruckman.
mm.
In games where he did have less than 50% ruck attendances, he averaged 85.2, which was 13 games, compared to his 114 in the 10 games where he was the number one ruck. Being priced at an average of 97.9 with those pure ruck games overinflating his average, it does mean he is slightly overpriced, um, especially if his expected average is a pure key position forward or ruck relief in 2024 is 85 odd. So his true price should probably be closer to 475k ish. That being said, though, the Hodor has just a total lack of durability. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. I swear that guy steps on the field and I don't know, injures himself.
Yeah.
So I
Soft tissue.
don't think, yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's fair to expect Jackson won't get any number one ruck time. Like
Mm.
at
It's going
some
to happen at
stage he
some
will. It's
stage.
going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but it just depends on how much is it, when is it, how much time will he get. So I guess the question from there is he not worth starting with because Darcy might be, there to cramp his style? Is he an upgrade target? Who knows? But there has been talk that Shrek or Hodor or Sean Darcy isn't recovering. So he from as quickly as expected from ankle surgery that he did have last year. It might mean that he has a limited preseason and might mean there are doubts heading into the early part of the season
Mm.
for him, which could be good for Jackson. But also that means that we don't know when Darcy is ready to return.
Mm.
And so, like we said, he may be more of an upgrade target if, Hodor ends up going down mid-season for an extended period.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, isn't he? Like any other season, if you were putting
Mm,
him with the group of last year's selections, you wouldn't
mm.
even bat an eyelid, I think. But
No.
again, again referencing this, which we will numerous times, but just with what we have on offer, he's kind of someone you need to consider. And I think, yeah, without Hodor being there potentially
Mm,
early season if he doesn't recover in time,
yeah.
or even so, if he is fit for round one, as you mentioned, with the amount of niggles that he's had over the course of
Mm,
seasons gone, there is a chance that potentially he goes down again. And yeah, it does obviously elevate the prospects for LJ. So in terms of verdicts, we'll probably segue out of that now. But Liam, did you want to go first in terms of what you were thinking, or are you just having a
yes.
quick look at some stats?
Yes. I'm just having a quick look at the number of games, the matches that Sean Darcy has played over his career.
Oh,
So
yes.
this year he's played 15, as in 2023 was 15, 2022 was 19, 2021 was 21, 2020, 15, 2019, 11, and then 7 and 8 in 2018 and 2017, respectively. So he's generally, other than 2021, which is really the outlier, he's
Mm,
missing at least 2, 3, 4 games a season at a minimum, I'd say. Upwards probably of 6 or 7. So there's potential for Jackson there, but it just comes down to when those games are missed and whether they're sporadic or are they
mm,
sort of is he not finishing the season and therefore is a good trade-in target or is it yeah an early one?
yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's just something to keep in mind. But yes, in terms of verdict, I just think had Darcy left last year, he'd probably be one of the first picked for mine with
Mm,
that DPP as a ruck. It is slim pickings in the forwards, as we've said, so I don't hate it, but it really comes down to what percentage of ruck time he gets. Potentially, there's a natural increase in his scoring from 85.2 when he is the second ruck, just purely based on him, improving, like maturing in terms of his age.
mm,
If so, we might see a 95% average, which could see him finish as a top eight forward. I'd probably want to see what the preseason throws at us. Um, in terms of how he lines up and what the rock percentage looks like before picking him. But even then, I think you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt because I have a feeling last year we thought he was going to get more time
mm,
in the preseason, and then it never eventuated
yeah.
the season until Darcy had those injuries.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very similar as well. Like I'm very 50-50.
Mm,
As you said, slim pickings outside of Jackson and MACRAE, who we spoke of. So elevates himself into contention. But yeah, as we've kind of outlined there, and as you just spoke to, that if he can get a handle on more ruck time, he does firm as a more sort of confident pick. But
mm,
again, that's the major sticking point because as we've rolled through, a lot of his scoring and ceiling. The scoring ceiling is only elevated off the back of having that extra ruck time. Because, yeah, as you said, if you sort of discount those games where he's number one ruck, his
Yeah.
average of 97.9 depletes down to 85 odd. And he's, there therefore means that his starting price in 2024 is around about 70K
Mhm.
overinflated. So, sort of searching value off the back of that. I think, yeah, even if Hodor does start in round one, um, maybe Luke Jackson has more of a ruck split. But even then, I would prefer to sort of hold off, I think, at this stage until inevitably Hodor gets torn to shreds by
Mhm.
the White Walkers of the zombies as he's holding the door. Nice little reference there to Game of Thrones. But yeah, I think he's a wait and see for me. And only until Jacko takes that number one ruck mantle will I be tempted. Until then, if he's
Yeah.
just splitting his time between key forward and ruck, yeah, it doesn't really appeal at this stage. But
Yeah.
he's still in contention for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think I'd rule him out. It's not a line through him. Like I think there might be for some other players.
Mm,
But also talking about one-dimensional players, that really is Sean Darcy. Like
yeah.
it's not like you can rely on him as a forward, and bring Jackson in as the first ruckman, with Darcy playing as a forward. You know, like to split the time. So really, Darcy probably is going to be the number one ruck, regardless there.
Mm. 100%. We'll keep an eye on him, and we'll move on to
Mm,
this next prospect down the list, and it is Dustin Martin, as a pure forward. He's priced at 527.3K. 2023 average is 94.3. Extra buy. He does indeed, because his team in the
mhm.
Tigs plays in round zero. So obviously another popular pick potentially, but at 32 years of age, he does go against the rule of not picking really players 30 plus. But Libba bucked that trend last year, didn't he? His career
He
best
did.
season. So who knows? Is this going to be a career best season for Dusty? Well, looking at his 2023 season, he averaged 94.3, as I said, with a lot of volatility, however. High scores of 139, 158, and low scores of 54 and 55. And he also managed to ton up in just 7 games from 20 rounds. But looking at his averages over the past 3 years, he has averaged 94.3, 87.3, and 92.5 since 2021. And it means he's priced right around that average, if not slightly higher, meaning he's overpriced for his value over the recent years. The other question marks will be over how Adam Uze, the new coach, of course, for the Tigs, deploys Dusty. You would assume he'll be played forward, but as the Tigers appear on the downward slide potentially, apologies, Tigers fans, will a forward role for him be conducive to scoring? Couple that with a potential regression as he ages, and there are serious questions over Dusty. It looks as though some of the attention he's gathering as an option is from the way he ended last season. So that's obviously front of mind there, where he went 131, 117, 93, 108, 81, 158, 139 from rounds 18 to 24 last season. So the old boy, he's still got it, it seems, but can he carry it forward another season into 2024?
Mm.
So Liam, verdicts. What's your verdict? Did you want to jump in first? Anything to add off the back of that?
I don't like it in general. Like I just think there's too many negatives.
Mm,
Like he's not going to play midfield, unfortunately. I think it's gonna be natural regression based on the fact that he is 30 plus. I mean, I know Libba, who
mm,
bucked that trend, but I think it's an exception to the rule as opposed to
yeah, the
um,
norm.
yeah, the norm. Yeah, I think the only reason that we're talking about him is the fact that we are genuinely lacking forward options, like we've
Mm,
spoken of, and the fact that yeah, as you said, he from round 17 he smashed it. Like before that, he turned up twice. So from rounds 1 to 14, he turned
mm,
up twice, a 113 and a 109, with scores of 54, 95, sort of all over the place. Nothing mixed bag there. And then
yeah,
after that, what turned up one, two, three, four, 5 times from 7 matches. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of recency bias there, that might be creeping in, and I think it could be a bit of a trap.
Yeah, 100%. And just to that that he's entered the season as well. So that was from
Mm,
rounds 18, wasn't it, to 24. So in those games, he kicked in terms of goals, 2, 2, 3, 0, 3, and 1. So a lot of those came off the back
mm,
of, or a lot of those big scores came off the back of kicking bags of goals, crucial goals, of course. So yeah, I mean, he was still getting CBAs around about sort of 20. If I was to look quickly at that, the average around about 25, maybe close to 30% CBAs, if that. Obviously not a full-time mid. Um, Maybe he can do it if he can continue, I guess, kicking goals if he's played as a pure forward with a bit part
mm.
in the midfield. But I think, yeah, if he's played as a pure forward, he's only going to have that natural regression, you would think. Another year older, the soft tissue injuries come into the mix. We saw with that man who I don't really want to say his name, but I'll say it anyway, Nat Five. We saw what happened with him as well. He was
Yeah.
touted to play more up forward with stints in the midfield. He copped some injuries as well and just couldn't get back on the park. So Dusty's probably a different kettle of fish, a little bit more durable, but creeping into his game ever so slightly. But for me, he hasn't really entered the realm for me as an option at all in the forward. So
Mm.
that's where I stand, and that's where you stand, Liam.
Yep, agreed entirely. So let's move on to the next cab off the ranks, and it is the wee man, Caleb
You
Daniel,
the helmet.
518.8K helmet, mid forward eligible. His average last season was 92.8, and he does not have the extra buy, so just the one buy for Caleb Daniel. So, as we mentioned in our discussion on MACRAE, the wee man, as we call him, was gifted with 19% CBAs despite having just 0%. So, not even just nothing
Mm,
in 2022. In a bit of a weird role switch, as he began running through the middle. It was an experiment that was taken seriously across only 8 rounds in total, where he had upwards of 39% CBAs. So that was in rounds 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 17, and 18. Interestingly, though, in 4 of those 7 games, he seemingly ate up the CBAs that would have otherwise been given to MACRAE, with MACRAE getting only 9%, 20%, 0, 0, and 0%, compared to Daniel's 43, 45, 41, 39, and 40%. So really seems as though those two were sort of
linked, yeah.
linked, yeah, sharing the role, or,
Mm,
or Daniel was taking the role of MACRAE there. Um, but from rounds 19 until the end of the season, the midfield experiment seemingly appeared to be over, with his CBAs dropping to 13%, 0%, 12%, 9%, 13%, and 0%, whereas McRae was granted far more with 30%, 52%, 42%, 36%, and 53%. So yeah, really the correlation there is quite obvious.
yeah.
So it would seem that Daniel and McRae are very much linked in that respect. But even with the increased mid time, he improved on his average, sorry, in 2022 by 1.8%. So he had an average of 91 in 2022 compared to his
Mm,
92.8 in 2023. So while Daniel has been relatively consistent in his averages across the past 5 years, with averages of 99.1, 104.4, 94.4, 91, and 92.8. Um, but as you can see, there has been a bit of a drop off in recent seasons. Most concerningly, though, his scores late in the season dropped off when his role switched again, when he
mm.
was started being used as a high half forward, only scoring 35, 79, 51, 99, and 76. If this role continues into 2024, it would mean he is one to avoid. But even if he is used back in defense, at his current price point, he probably doesn't provide much value or much real upside, unfortunately. It's probably more
It's
just you know what you're going to get. Like
yeah,
if he does play in defense, you know what you're going to get. The problem
yeah.
is you don't know what you're going to get because it's Bevo.
Yeah, exactly. And that's funny as well. Like you're mentioning there, him playing the high half forward, like late in the season.
Mm,
That virtually again correlates with when McRae went from playing that same role as a
yeah.
high half forward, going back into the middle. So these blokes are completely linked. So as we spoke to McRae before, and the wee man, that's part of the impact that they've had collectively on each other. But in terms of verdict, Liam, are you much of a fan?
No.
No.
Simply
Even
put, nah.
even if he goes back
I,
to defense?
not really. Like
No.
maybe upgrade to him if it looks good, but
Yep.
I don't know. Don't think it's worth the risk and his price point.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some other guys who are cheaper than him shortly,
Mm.
who I would much prefer both of those guys over Caleb Daniel.
Yeah, and even if he moves back to defense, he's not gonna like that loose distributor role that he had for a couple of seasons there. That's now been eaten up by the likes of Dale and
Mm,
Richards as well, especially last year.
mm,
He took another step in his game. So both of those guys will be cramping his style. And that's probably part of the reason why Bevo's thought, okay, well, I've got these two guys in Dale and Richards that can play that same role to the same, if not greater effect. Where can I put the wee man? And that's part of the reason why, okay, I'll throw him in the middle. Oh, okay, I'll throw him up forward, which just
yeah.
is so crazy. You think you would have worked that out.
Mm,
But hopefully that's where the preseason comes into things, and Bevo can work that out over the preseason like other coaches do. So all that to say, I think he's likely a pass for me.
mm. Agreed.
Well, let's move on to the next candidate. We have a couple left here. And second last, we have here Dylan Moore. He's priced at
Mm,
508.6K as a forward, and his 2023 average was 91 on the dot. In terms of his extra buy, no, he only has the one, thankfully, so I don't have to factor that in. And in terms of his 2023 season, he ended it as the 13th best forward with an average of 91. As I said, in the last 2 years, he has managed to average above 90 for the season while playing all games for the season. So his durability is quite high, which is also a bonus. And while he has the ability to score while playing as a forward, we've seen when he gets an opportunity in the middle, in the back end of 2022 in particular, that his scoring can really increase. Over rounds 17 to 21 in that season, he had 60%, 61%, 56%, 45%, and 73% CBAs for scores of 135, 113, 124, 69 dinner for two, and a 101 for a 5 round average of 108.4, which is quite the uptick on his
mm.
finishing average of 91. So there's no reason if he does get increased time in the middle that he can't raise his average from that 91 to at least high 90s, if not 100 plus, which is where the upside comes into it here for more. And the reason he becomes an interesting pick is the recruits for Hawthorn in the offseason. They basically stacked their forward line with a couple of smalls, couple of talls in Ginnivan, Gunston, and Scholl all coming into the side, as well as Nick Watson, the new draftee, the best small forward, arguably, of the draft. So that means there may be a push for him to go, maybe spend a little bit more time in the middle, and could mean there's some upside to be had. Liam, thoughts?
Um, I don't mind it.
Yep.
I've never really liked Dylan Moore as a pick, but I
Mm,
think this year presents as an option more than ever, just purely based off the lack of other options that we do have. I think we can see him averaging mid 90s, especially
yep.
if he gets that potential time in the middle. I think he can surpass that, finish top eight forward, definitely. Again, I think we have to realign our expectations of the forwards this year. So a 90, 95 is probably not a bad option, not a bad average for them. If it came down to it, if it's between him and a Daniel or a Dusty, I'd be going for more. I think he has the most upside of those three,
Yep. Yep. I totally agree. Yeah,
and he's
I would
cheaper.
s- I would say consider me tempted, if not on the cusp of being in my team at the moment.
Mm,
Definite watch, obviously, over the preseason, and it does come back to that fact that if you can get those extra CBAs, that's where the upside presents itself with more. More having more potential CBAs equals
mm,
more points and a
mm.
high average. So I am quite bullish on him just off the back of those inclusions in the forward line. But yeah, definitely a big, big watch over the preseason with his role.
Yeah, agreed entirely. And let's move on to the last option we have in today's episode, and it is Sam Flanders.
Mm.
400, I have like flashbacks when I say that name.
Stupid sexy.
494.2. Okay, hopefully more stupid than sexy. Sorry, hopefully more sexy than stupid. Uh,
He was more stupid than
494.
sexy last year.
He was more stupid than sexy last year. 494.2K. He is mid forward eligible. He had a 2023 average of 88.4, and he does not. Does he have the extra bye?
Sorry, yes, he does. Yes, we've written down here no,
Yes.
but he does
I
because
was going
Gold
to say,
Coast
I thought he
play.
would have because Gold Coast would be playing.
Yes.
So, Flanders. God, I hate that name right now.
I'm feeling a mite peckish. Mind if I chew your ear?
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders.
He was a zombie?
I hate that I'm going to fall for him again. Flanders falls into the unique spot of being both classified as a premium and a value option, and we will detail why shortly. While he is priced at at an average of just 88.4, keep in mind that this contains factors that hold him back from having a higher average and a higher price point, namely a sub-affected game and a limited role across the across 4 games, across season 2023. Round 3 and 8 were both sub-affected games where he scored 41 and 26. Combine that with the scores of 46 and 64 in the opening 2 rounds.
We know that all too well.
Yep. Where he was camped across the half forward line and the wing, and it brings down his average to 88.4. If we do discount those 2 sub-affected games, it reflects a truer average of 97.6. And if we apply a further discount to those first 2 games as well with the old roll, his overall average and more true average increases, especially when he's played 4 games in his role in the engine room, and it comes out at 106.1, which is very juicy. Viewed from this perspective, his true price at this true average should be around 593k roughly, which is nearly a whopping 100k more than what he is currently priced at. So very, very juicy value there. Damon, what are your
I do
thoughts?
like it. I am locking and loading. He's probably the one guy, and I think some people like yourself, we've both been burnt, but I reckon those people that have been burnt are probably a little bit more toey compared to others. But I'm back on board with him. I wish I had the trades to bring him back in late in the season, and he's developed the way that we thought he was going to from round 1 in 2023. Now he's that player. I think in 2024 we can say it with a bit more confidence. New coach at the helm, but Dimmer, he hasn't coached. That's the only sort of question mark, I guess, is he obviously hasn't coached Gold Coast yet, but surely enough, he's seen what Flanders was doing when he was on the sidelines, when he went bloody masquerading around the globe. He would have tuned in for some games, surely, for his new team, and seeing that Flanders does his best work when he's in the middle. So I think for me, he is, or maybe only the only genuine gun midfielder out and out. You know, the likes of when we spoke of Rosie, Butters, Dunks, all those guys that we had last year. I reckon Flanders may be the only guy in that mold that's available to us in the forward line for 2024. So from what I saw of him in 2023, discounting those 2 games that we owned him, of course, and got burnt ever so badly. When he's played his natural position, he's the absolute real deal. So for me, he's a lock and load. What do you reckon, Liam?
I'm not going to go as hard as a lock and load.
Ooh, okay.
Only being that I need to see his role in the preseason matches and probably in round 0. He's in my side 100%. I think he's all but a lock and load. Like, I would just have to not like his role under Dimmer to not start him. So it's more so it's lock and load with like a little asterisk next to it of watch the preseason. But I guess it's probably the same as any player, realistically. So he's in my side. I like him. I want him to be the I don't know, F2 or F3 or whatever he's going to be. And he currently is in my side. But I'm going to have to wait for the preseason matches because I just want to make sure. Just the only concern I have is Dimmer. If it wasn't for Dimmer, not Dimmer himself, but just the coach, like a new coach.
New coach at the helm,
I wouldn't be concerned.
The only thing, I mean, that is worrying to some extent is that, like, when he finally got given CBAs and, like, when he had one of that run of games to end the season, 100, 119, 96, 125, 113, couple of 80s, 90, 130 and a 121. The last game of the season, he had his lowest CBAs since pre-round 15 at 11%, but he still scored 121. It's probably off the back of he kicked a couple of goals. The one thing to keep in mind as well is that Tookie Miller was returning from his knee injury, and was working his way into fitness. And he's also vying for some mid-time. We'll probably have a bit of a closer look in terms of the Suns at midfield and engine room more broadly as to how he fits into it and who gets squeezed out. Because, I mean, I think I'm still confident in Flanders getting that mid-time, but I'm still buoyed by the fact that, yeah, he still scored all right, even though he had 11% CBAs in that last round. Small sample size, obviously, but yeah, I'm still bullish, but
What did he
ever
score
so
around
slow.
2023 as well? Do you have that number there? Sorry.
Round 23 was 130. He had
Yeah,
21%
so that was
CBAs.
21% CBA still too. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think Took Miller when he returned from injury never really got up there in what we would normally see from him in terms of CBAs. He had 17 in his first game back, not unsurprising. 64, 46, 84 was probably his highest, and sort of around where he would normally be, 61, 72, and 68. So I think there's potential that Miller does take some more, but it just comes down to whether Sam Flanders is the where they go, like basically where they're taken from, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, 100%. But obviously one to watch, like all those other guys that we spoke of. But we should also make mention that we obviously haven't included key forwards in our discussion point here, like the likes of Charlie Curnow and Cameron Jezza and all that in our discussion, as they aren't super favorable options to us. As you all know, if you're a regular viewer of us or listener from a podcast sense, as we always say, key position players in SuperCoach aren't conducive to positive scoring as they have too much volatility and obviously reliance on their midfielders feeding them first and foremost, but also their team's overall performance dictating whether or not they score well or not. Because if a team isn't getting enough entries inside the forward 50, obviously those tall forwards, as a result, aren't scoring well.
Yes, and let's use Curnow, I think, as an example here. So he just sort of to highlight this, he did average 97.6 across the season, but it is really reliant on him kicking big bags of goals for high scores, and his average is very much inflated by a 186 and a 178. Both scored against the hapless Eagles. So if we take those out, I think he scored like 20 goals in those two games.
Yeah, crazy.
So if we take those out, his average does reduce to 89.5. Compound that with just the general volatility in his scoring. He has a range of 139 between his top score and his bottom score. So that's the risk that you get with key position forwards. So not saying don't consider them, just saying consider them at your own peril, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The risks that come with them.
Yeah.
But Liam, that rounds us out for part one in our broader discussion on forwards during our first round of preseason analysis episodes that we've non-creatively called Forwards Week. Just keep it simple.
Very simple. But we have obviously touched on the Premos in this part, and we'll be discussing the mid-pricers in the next episode and rookies in the third episode. These will be released on Wednesday and Friday, respectively. So if you're coming to us late, make sure to jump across to those two other episodes.
Of course. And also, if there's any forward Premos that you would like us to touch on that we didn't in this episode or subsequent episodes, please comment down below if you're watching us on YouTube, of course, or you can, obviously hit us up across our socials, which we'll run through in a moment. But of course, if you are keen for us to touch on any other players, we'll do so in a special episode later in the preseason where we run through some what we'll call frequently asked players.
Yes. Or alternatively, you can leave a comment or send us a DM on any of our social channels, which you can find here. So for Twitter at supercoach_edge, Facebook and Instagram at supercoachedge. Just search those and you'll find us.
Very nice. Well, Liam, that does us for the first bit of 2024 content, and it was a thrill to be back in the chair.
It is.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll go and collect our thoughts, recharge our brains, and be back very, very shortly. So we'll catch you in the next one.
See you guys.